We reached 500,000 subscribers and I decided to do an AMA. I will answer all the questions I got from you guys, and I'm also not putting that much time into editing, and there will be no animations. This will basically be a podcast. I will go over all the questions I got on the YouTube community post when I finished writing this script. Some of you left really nice comments alongside your questions, but I will only go over the question parts. I do thank all of you for your compliments, that was really nice to read. I will also rephrase some questions to make them easier to comprehend, and there were some questions I couldn't fit in anywhere else, so there will be a random question sprinkled throughout. Alright, time to get some cake and get started. Chapter 1. The Rise of Historyscope. What was the reason for you to start a YouTube channel? Plan A for me was to have something that I could show off to potential employers to get a job, showing them that I wasn't incompetent. And as a plan B, it was to make money if I could ever become successful. What is the history of Historyscope? I started in 2016 when I had no idea what to make videos on. I decided to focus on fictional stuff at first, so I decided to make videos about the Game of Thrones universe, particularly the Dance of the Dragons, which they also turned into a prequel for the Game of Thrones series. This was meant to teach me how to make videos, basically. Then I realized that most fiction just isn't detailed enough for history-type videos. So I decided to do something else, something I myself wanted to learn about. That was the European Union. I personally believe that the only way to truly have an opinion on something is to first understand it. To give an example, I don't have an opinion on quantum mechanics, because I don't understand it at all. So I made a series of videos about the European Union to understand it. And I thought that seeing as I did a couple of history videos and fictional videos, I could also add mythology videos. And the one I knew almost nothing about, while being very important, was Islam. So I made a video about the creation of Islam, combining both history and mythology. After that, I suddenly had the crazy idea to do a history video about amputations. I thought it might be just crazy enough and niche enough that people would watch it. I even went to my doctor to ask him a couple of questions. It was a truly fascinating video to make, and there is nothing like it on YouTube. It was also my first popular video for over a year. I made a couple of weird videos like that afterwards, which didn't do very well. By the way, if you want to look along, you can go to my YouTube channel and then select the most recent one, and then you can see which videos I'm specifically talking about, because I'm not gonna mention all of them, especially not the bads. But by that time I had just moved back from living in Berlin. While I was in Berlin, I visited the Berlin Wall Museum. I was fascinated by it and decided I could make a video about it as well. So I worked on the German reunification video. I had seen advice that in order for a speech to be effective, you should have a message that you repeat several times. So I put the phrase "Germany will be united" 10 times in a video that's just over 10 minutes long, so once per minute, which was a bit much, and I got a lot of complaints about it, even on other videos, to the point that it became a joke, and I decided to just roll with it and started randomly adding a variation of that phrase in my videos. And then at the end of 2017, I got 1,000 subscribers. I had been uploading videos for almost one whole year. And I concluded that if I can get 1,000 subscribers in a year, then my YouTube channel is good enough to eventually earn money with it. So I kept going until I made the Nuremberg trial video. And that's the first video that went viral, and I reached 10,000 subscribers with it. It took a lot of effort to make, but it was worth it. I earned almost €2,000 in 2 months and bought my current computer with it. I could now make videos a lot faster without constant crashes or the computer taking forever to finish some tasks. And with that, I decided to switch to only making history videos. I decided to focus on topics most people didn't know a lot about, but I didn't want to wait months to upload a video. After all, I still had work to do to actually earn a living. So I split them up in small videos, like a 3-part series on Tulipmania, and with the Tulipmania video, I also settled on an art style. And with that, I knew that it was time to start making videos I actually wanted to make in good quality. You see, up until this point, my videos weren't that good, so I would need to practice. And by that time, I felt I had settled on an art style that wasn't just a ripoff of extra history. And one thing I always wanted to learn about was the Aztec Empire. So I made a 6-part series, and they did okay, but not as good as I had hoped. Well, then I put them all together into one giant video, and damn, it got popular. It easily surpassed the total views of all all 6 individual parts together. And even today it's still one of my most popular videos. And so from then on I decided to make longer videos because they were apparently much more popular. And I would focus on more broad topics such as the rise and fall of empires. But first, I got fired from my job. I needed more money, and people had been asking me to make a video about the Tokyo trial as a sequel to the Nuremberg trial. And so I did. That got me a little bit more money at least, and I made some longer videos like the Delta Works and the history of alcohol videos, while also putting the Muhammad videos and Tulamania videos into 2 long videos. But I still needed a job. Well, then 2020 happened, and there were no jobs to find for a while. So I focused on YouTube and made a video I always wanted to make. The breakup of the Soviet Union. It took me over a month to make and was longer than any single video I had made before, but it was worth it. It went viral. Suddenly views went up for all videos and I started earning over €2,000 per month. It wasn't much, but at least I could support myself. I then made a video about the Great Depression, seeing as 2020 would be one of the worst recessions in human history. I made another breakup video about the breakup of Yugoslavia. They did pretty well, and from then on it would become a series on various breakups. And then the history of North and South Korea began changing everything. From that moment on, I had a researcher giving me the information I needed to make longer videos much more easily. From then on, videos became 40 to 45 minutes long. And that video also taught me something else. You see, that video goes a little bit viral every couple of months. Not a lot, usually just about 5 to 10 times more popular for a couple of days. And the reason it becomes popular so often is because every couple of months, North Korea was in the news. And I can tell you exactly when North Korea launches a missile by looking when my views go up suddenly. Because I make history videos, I can't really cover things that are popular all of a sudden. But there are some things that you know are going to happen, and you can make videos about that. For example, Iran will be in the news a lot for the coming years because of their nuclear weapons program, civil unrest and proxy wars. I can assure you that if you make a good video about Iran, it will go viral over and over and over again. And I decided to test this out some more by creating the videos on why is Japan so rich and why is Taiwan so rich. And it turns out that when North Korea launches a missile, the Korean video gets more popular, and in turn also the Japan and Taiwan videos get more popular. And because of China's military expansion, its neighbors start their own military expansion. When countries raise military spending, tensions rise. The news loves rising tensions. So I know that in the coming years, those videos will go viral over and over and over, the longer tensions remain high in East Asia. And if China ever invades Taiwan, then the Taiwan video will get millions of views. I know this because in 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine again, and I got millions of views on the breakup of the Soviet Union video. But anyway, back to Korea. After the Korea video, I would focus on longer videos covering broad topics, decolonization of Africa, why is Africa still poor, and the history of autism. But why is Africa still poor went viral. So I decided to make another video like that for why is India still poor, and it also did really well. And from then on, my videos mainly focused on the breakup of empires, the rise and fall of empires, and why certain countries were rich or poor, with a couple of other topics in the middle. Then Russia invaded, I got millions of views, and decided to invest a lot of that money into History Scope. And also I gave a couple of €1,000 to charities in Ukraine to support, humanitarian aid. Then I went looking for an animator, and it took me a while to find ones that fit. Only by the end of 2022 did I find 2 amazing animators. But this meant that in 2022, video production slowed down significantly. And in 2023, we caught back up again. In that year, I also experimented with a couple of different videos, but most of them didn't do that well. The experiment that was successful was the Unification of Italy video. So then, at the beginning of 2024, we switched video production to topics that are more popular and that we're just better at making than anyone else. These are 1. The rise and fall of empires, 2. A series of videos about a similar topic, and at the end we put them all together into one giant video. For that we currently have the transatlantic slave trade and the decolonization of the world series. And probably the China series is coming soon. 3 unification videos. Right now we have the unification of Germany planned. And 4th, why is a certain country or region either rich or poor? And this is what we're doing now. And from now on what we will do is have 3 History Scope videos every 4 months. Alright, next question. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? I mean, best case scenario that I'm working towards is History Scope becomes more successful and it earns at least €10,000 per month. We have a video coming out almost every month now. Next year, I plan to make at least 10 videos. I am working a lot more efficiently now and am already working ahead most of the time, so 10 videos shouldn't be too crazy. With more videos, we get more views and more income. Our videos don't really drop in views over time. I mean, it's history, it's going to be just as relevant today as it will be 10 years from now. It's not like some completely new developments are going to happen with like the rise and fall of the Ottoman Empire. Most of our income comes from the long videos we've been making in the current style. I counted them and we have 32 of them. So if we make 10 videos per year, then in over 3 years, we should have double the money-making videos. Even if views go down for all the videos, I don't think it would be crazy to think that the total views would go up by 50%. Right now, we're earning between 4,000 to 5,000 euro per month. So 50% more views is 50% more money usually. Over the course of 10 years, we should have 100 more videos. So we go from 32 to 132. So doubling our income shouldn't be that crazy, right? My goal is to be able to afford buying my own house. But after that, I don't really know what to do with the money, at least not when it comes to personal use. If I have 3,000 euro per month, I have more money than I would know what to do with. I don't have expensive hobbies, so what would I even do with the extra money? Well, invest it back into history scope. I would love to be able to make more videos or pay people more money to make higher quality videos. Imagine if I could just sit the animators down, give them a couple €1,000 and then come back to me with a new animation standard that looks even better than what we have now. Or imagine I could hire another person to write scripts as well, so we could make more videos and higher quality videos and pay people for their work. But so far, this is all just wishful thinking. On one hand, it shouldn't be that difficult. It's just a matter of doing the work. Yet on the other hand, anything could happen between now and 10 years from now. Maybe the channel gets deleted, or YouTube stops being popular, or other people do history better and I can't compete. But yeah, that's the plan so far. Earn 10,000 per month and invest most of that into other people to make more and better videos. How big is the team? 6 people, 1 Discord moderator, 2 animators, 1 audio editor, 1 researcher, and 1 me. How are your videos made? We pick one of the categories and create a whole bunch of potential video ideas. For the rise and fall of empires, I went to the Wikipedia of 2 video games, Civilization and Humankind. They have a bunch of different human civilizations in their game, so I just look at all of them, slap the word the rise and fall in front of it, and boom, we have a new video title. For video series, we do something similar, but we check for ones that would blend into each other really well. For example, there are multiple Chinese empires. So why not just do a whole series about every Chinese empire and then slap them all together? We could do the same for Persia/Iran or for India and go over the major dynasties and empires. For the unification videos, there aren't that many options, so we did unification of Germany, for example. And lastly, why certain countries or regions are rich or poor is purely based on how often I see people talking about them. So right now there is a lot of buzz about countries like Poland and Czechia catching up to Western Europe. So we could do a video about how they did it, for example. For the video on Russia, we saw people comment on why Brazil isn't rich, so we added that to the list. Then we select a couple of topics and put them in a poll. Then you guys vote which one we will work on first. Very few topics are actually thrown away, we just save them for later. Then the researcher spends about 40 hours researching, then I spend about 80 hours writing the script, doing voiceovers, checking work, uploading, etc. An animator spends 8 hours animating, although sometimes I do that work as well on top of the other stuff. And the audio editor spends about 10 hours editing the audio. And after a total of 210 hours, we upload the video. Then I regularly spend time going over the comments. There is a special app for your phone to manage your YouTube channel, and it shows me all the new comments as soon as they get posted. YouTube already takes care of the worst comments, so I don't have to do them anymore. It used to be really bad. Then I weed out all the bots, all the unnecessary mean comments, or just the outright racists. And seriously, the amount of racist comments I've read over the years is staggering. There have been people who commented they did not want to watch my video because they saw a bunch of racists who I had not yet banned. And I do that whenever I have time, like when I'm standing in the elevator or waiting in line or just waiting for my food to boil. Is the cake a lie? Yes, I have no cake. But also, this question is special. I notice a couple of people commenting regularly, and this user is the first person I noticed. Farcasm, if you ever unsubscribe, I will be very sad. What is the budget for your average video to be researched, recorded and animated? €5,000. Do you ever doubt how good a video is, and have you ever scrapped any because you felt it just wasn't good enough? No, not really. I usually scrap videos very early in production. If there is no good research on the topic, then there is no point to continue. But if there is something, then it's usually good enough for a video. Are you hiring? No, not currently. We're barely breaking even at the moment. It's getting better again, and we're getting back quite a bit of money in taxes, so this year we're still okay. Maybe in a year or two, finances will be good enough to hire more people. Are you accepting volunteers? No, any work that needs doing is so complex and long that it would be immoral to ask volunteers to help. Plus, I don't think I can handle the extra workload of managing volunteers. I've done that before, it was awful. Have you ever eaten a taco? Yes. Chapter 2. Will you make a video about? Will you make a video about the rise and fall of Rome? No. The reason for that is that the competition for it is just too big. The way HistoryScope videos work is that we try to avoid competition. So HistoryScope has long-form history videos that are about 40 to 45 minutes long. They are animated videos that cover the larger social, political and economic events. So we don't talk about a war or an event or anything like that. Instead, we talk about things that take place over the course of decades or centuries, like the breakup of the Soviet Union or the rise and fall of the Mongol Empire. There is not a lot of competition for those types of videos on YouTube. Animated videos are usually shorter. Longer videos usually have a lot more paintings, maps or footage in them, or just someone talking in front of a camera. And if they are longer animated videos, they usually don't cover topics as big as HistoryScope. But then there is the Roman Empire. There are hundreds of videos I would be competing with, and I can't stand up to that. The Romans are just too popular, and besides, if you want to see a video about the rise and fall of Rome, then you can watch Overly Sarcastic Productions. It's almost 3 hours long. Will you make more videos for the China series? Probably yes. As of writing this, the counter is at 17,000 likes, so in a month or two it will reach 20,000 likes. I've already planned it in and will start working on it as soon as it reaches the 20,000 mark. And when I put all the China videos together, I'm thinking of giving the final video maybe a funny name like a short history of China, which will be over 5 hours long. Will you make more videos about India? Yes, almost every month there is a poll where you can pick which video we should work on next. If a topic doesn't get picked, we'll just put it in the next poll. For India, we have 3 videos planned so far: the rise and fall of the Mughal Empire, Indian colonization, and Indian decolonization. And possibly we'll turn it into a series as well, just as we did with the transatlantic slave trade, Aztec Empire, the rise and fall of China, etc. Will you make a video about how the Netherlands got so rich? I honestly wasn't planning on making one, but this is a good topic. It's going on the list. You can vote for it at some point in the future. What's a topic you wish you could cover on the channel, but can never find a chance to? The rise and fall of the Incan Empire. I've already started it, and it will take a lot of work, so I work on it occasionally. But eventually I want to make a very long video about it. It's going to be great. Maybe after the slave trade and decolonization videos are done, I could do a series on the Incan Empire as well, but we'll see. In your opinion, why are some important subjects in history covered ad nauseum in minute detail and others seemingly ignored? Almost anything about the USA and Europe, basically Africa, Central Asia and Native American histories are largely ignored. I would love to know more about them, but not a lot of research goes into it. So we also don't know a lot. Many people don't want to research it a lot because there is seemingly nothing of interest. What I would much rather make is a video about empires you don't know a lot about. For example, how many people know about different Chinese dynasties or Persian dynasties. So I would much rather do a series about those lesser known civilizations than bombarding you with information you can easily get somewhere else. I saw your schedule and saw Eastern Europe video planned, but don't you think that some countries there should receive a special video? Yes, so far that name is a placeholder. Will you ever do a collaboration with Possible History? No, I've tried doing a collaboration 3 times. Each time they contacted me and it went poorly. Once the person just didn't reply back after I said I was interested. Another time we talked for a bit before he ghosted me, and the 3rd time the other person said the topic was too complicated, so I don't want to go through that again. What is your favorite video on your channel? The breakup of the Soviet Union. What's your favorite car? I don't have any. Do you have a pet? No, in this household I am the pet. Are you interested in alternate history? Okay. Are you interested in alternate history? Yes, I like it quite a lot. If nobody had landed in North America and people here were left to develop into the 2000s instead of being colonized, what type of society do you think that would result in? That's a very interesting question. So when researching the Aztec video, I came across something interesting. Agriculture was limited to Central America and Northern South America because they began agriculture later. As a result, the plants had not yet evolved to become sturdier and couldn't be planted in colder weathers. As a result, large-scale agriculture did not exist north of Florida and south of Venezuela, except the area in and around the Incan Empire. If they had been allowed to live, let's say for some reason humans in the rest of the world died out, just like Homo erectus, then agriculture would have spread further north and south. It's likely that Central America would keep going through a cycle of city-states conquering each other and making them their vassals. Eventually those vassals rebel, until eventually they have so many rebellions the empire collapses, and the whole process starts all over again. This is the story of the Aztec Empire, and it's why the Spanish were able to conquer them so easily, but the Aztecs were not the first. A good example of this is Teotihuacan. But it's likely that over time this constant conflict would have meant better government, similar to what we saw in China for example. Eventually technologies would advance such as roads. The wheel would not be used. For that, you need a large amount of fat to lubricate the wheels. And over here in Afro-Eurasia, we have the pig, which produces so much fat so easily, it's a waste product for most of human history. But in Central America, they didn't have that. But I'm willing to bet that they would develop better metal tools. They were already in the Bronze Age. Given another 2000 years, they would have probably produced iron and steel as well. Over time, llamas and alpacas would become stronger as they were carefully selected to breed them to be larger. They would likely turn into beasts of burden. Keep in mind that the first horses also couldn't be ridden by people. It took thousands of years to evolve the horses into the muscular beasts they are today. Eventually, some sort of centralized government would appear and the region would create more permanent civilizations. Just as the region of France or China have been united under various empires and kingdoms, but each have their own long-running civilization that transcends all those empires. Eventually, places like Venezuela would adopt agriculture, and in that part of the world, oil could be found on the surface. Oil can be used as lubricant and they would be able to develop wheels. Eventually their culture would likely succeed and spread south to the Amazon. The river system would likely become a large trade area as metal tools from Central America are introduced, as well as finding, for example, gold. This would allow them to turn rainforests into farmlands. This isn't that crazy to think, as today there are lots of areas that used to be giant forests that were burned down over the course of centuries to turn into farmland. And we even think that Australia used to be a vast forest and grassland which humans burned down to hunt animals. We might even see an ecological collapse of the Amazon just as we do today. In North America is the most fertile farmland, so I would expect that to have the most powerful civilizations at first. I could imagine a vast patchwork of empires on the East Coast. More sparsely populated areas in the middle of North America, with various cities and empires situated along rivers and expanding outwards. I could easily imagine constant conflict like with China and the Mongols, with open grasslands having large nomadic groups which often raid the farming empires along the rivers. In the West I would at first not see too much development, however, eventually someone would decide to see how far north really goes, and just keep going and going, maybe form lucrative trade settlements, and eventually reach Asia via Alaska and then go down. Like, you just need one person to try it. Unlike in Siberia, North America had lots of tribes willing to trade. At least they were willing to trade with the French, so why not other Americans? Because nobody would be living there, it meant that crops and animals hadn't evolved to accommodate humans. Because seriously, the Americans were never going to develop faster than the rest of the world. They didn't have beasts of burden or as much agricultural land. They would eventually colonize Africa, Asia, Europe and Australia, but it would probably be slow as there weren't any people there to trade with, meaning everything had to be produced by colonists themselves. I think humanity would develop a lot slower, but over time the Americans would become a minority as over the centuries new crops are developed and there is much more land in Afro-Eurasia. How did the introduction of novel crops after their discovery in the Western Hemisphere by Europeans impact the subsequent era of geopolitics? I have no idea. Chapter 3. Who am I? Let's talk about me. Do you have an obsession with chocolate? Yes, my girlfriend has to hide the chocolate or else I would eat everything all at once. Who are you? I'm Avery. I like video games, I like cooking, I like sitting in the park, and I often play a bit of video games in the park while eating food that I cooked, though usually I work at the park. Actually, while writing this, someone came up to me asking me why I'm always working in the park while I was working at the park. What is your academic background? I have 4 degrees: retail, wholesale, international business and marketing. The first 2 degrees were part of a dual program at a vocational school. Normally a course would take 4 years, but we could do it in 3 and get 2 degrees. You know, all the time you spend in class sitting around doing mostly nothing? Or you would read a book together with one person reading out loud, meaning everyone was reading just a lot slower? Well, imagine a study which just does away with all of that nonsense, cram in some extra classes, and then each class is filled with lectures and assignments where you actually do stuff and learn stuff. The 3rd degree, international business, is a university degree that I got in the UK, and marketing is also a bachelor degree that I got in the Netherlands. What do you look like? Well, I used to look like my profile picture. About 1 year ago, I kept gaining more and more weight until eventually I just felt obese. Shirts that used to fit all of a sudden had a line of belly appearing underneath it. But in March 2023, I was on social media and I noticed a YouTuber called Olivia Ludfala talking about people with autism and ADHD, and I related to that a lot. So I came up with a theory. I am not just autistic, I also have ADHD. So in order to test out that theory, I decided that for 1 week I would just adopt any and all advice from people who have ADHD and autism. And one of them was to get up and do stuff as soon as you feel like it, but don't plan anything specifically. Just do something and stop immediately when you no longer feel like it. So I tried that. My butt hurt one day and I just got up and organized my clothes. It felt great. So I did it more until now I take a lot of breaks to take care of myself and my environment. I cook more, I cook healthier foods, I clean more, I exercise more, I started using less medicinal herbs, I start taking better care of myself in general. Because I'm a lot more active, cook healthier food, work out, and actively try taking care of myself, I am now in a transitional period. I think another year and I will look very different. So at the moment, I look kind of fit with a layer of fat on top that is too much to be healthy. I am about 100 kilograms at the moment, and I am average Dutch male size, which is about 1 meter and 80 centimeters, or I think 6 feet. I am also getting bald, so I will need to go somewhere like Turkey or Hungary to have a hair transplant because I don't look good without hair. I've also started having better skincare routines. I have special stuff that I put in my beard that is specifically a shampoo to make your beard like look good, but also make it feel all like soft and nice, as well as giving it a nice smell so that, you know, when my girlfriend hugs me, she has the delicious smell of citrus. At the moment, if I don't take care of myself at all, I basically start looking like Karl Marx, but without the grey beard. So I just look like a young Karl Marx, but in the most unflattering ways possible. To give an example, I have sat on the train and I looked at someone to, you know, make eye contact and smile to show just to be friendly. And then they stood up and walked away from me because I just looked too homeless and Karl Marxy. So right now I'm still transitioning to how I actually want to look, but if I keep going, I will probably be able to switch between multiple looks depending on the weather and how I feel. Firstly, I can go for a more Viking look where I have the beard, shave it a little bit so it's in a nice, you know, pointy arrow looking down shape, have a bit of muscle, and then have short hair. I can also look like I do right now in the profile picture that I have on my YouTube channel, just, you know, thinner, where my face is oval shaped and then covered on all sides with hair. And I don't know, maybe a couple of other ones that I want to do. Right now I'm still looking at like what other guys who look like me look like. And then, well, seeing as I'm bisexual, for me it's very easy to tell whether or not they look good or not. And if I think, damn, that looks good, I could pull that off at least with my body shape, then I will try doing that as well. Unfortunately, most men do not seem to take that much care about their physical appearance other than, you know, showering and stuff like that. So it is a bit difficult, but I do want to be the type of person who looks like they put a bit more effort into themselves than the average man. But at the same time, also don't put in so much effort that it starts looking like I'm part of a boy band. Can you oil up for us? No, not yet. Once I build enough muscle and lose some more fat, then yeah, probably I could, but right now, nobody wants to see that. Nationality? Dutch. Favorite music genre or artists? I don't really have one. I generally like deep voices, particularly deep female voices. Here on YouTube, I particularly like Ref Scrap, Anna Pantsu, Rhaenyra, Little V, and quite a few more. I have a playlist for all the music I listen to in the description. What are the best spots/landmarks to visit in the Netherlands? I honestly don't think any of them are particularly good. What is your favorite empire in history? I honestly don't really know. I think the Aztec Empire still, because that part of the world comprised of city-states who demanded tribute from other city-states, but they rarely had some sort of centralized government or took over cities to expand their direct control. The Aztecs were just the latest one making the same mistake, and it seems like that by the end they sort of realized this. They had begun placing Aztec cities around their empire from which to control the vassal states, thereby colonizing them. If the Europeans hadn't arrived, it's likely Central America would have had some sort of central government, even if it's just the beginning of one. Do you play history-adjacent games? Which one do you like the best? Just reading this question a couple of days ago made me decide to play Crusader Kings 3. I have also played Hearts of Iron 4, but I'm not very good at it. And in general, I like RTS games, so I've played every single Age of Empires game, both the original when I was a child, as well as the remakes. Favorite alternate history scenario? Any scenario where the Western culture does not become the dominant culture of the world. I want to see something new. Imagine if West Africa turned the profits of the slave trade into industrialization and Ghana and Nigeria are now the dominant powers in the world. Imagine the different architecture, culture and governments we'd have. Or maybe the Mughal Empire becomes a superpower and we now have Indian-style structures around the world instead of Western structures. Does Finland exist? Yeah, sure, it's where all the sharks live. I mean, come on, it's called Finland. It's what, right next to Wingland and Tailland? When I asked for weird questions from you guys, I was expecting more grounded in reality. Chapter 4. Autism. Has your autism had an effect on your education before you became a YouTuber? And if so, positively or negatively? Yes, a lot. In primary schools, the teachers basically told my parents to take me to another school. The reason for that is that I would drag down the average grade of the school and that would look bad. On top of that, there was the endless bullying I received, and teachers usually blamed me for being bullied because I behaved differently. So, yeah. In high school it got worse, bullying was no longer just a thing I got from fellow students, the teachers now also joined in on it. To give a few examples, a teacher once screamed at me that I should have taken my pills that morning. My first year mathematics teacher in high school picked on me every day, never ever leaving me alone. To give an example from that dude, once I didn't take out my book on the table, so he just sat in front of the class for 15 minutes doing nothing until I pulled my book out. And then he blamed me that he wasn't doing his job so that everyone could bully me afterwards. Even though many students also didn't get their books out until the class started, but you know, I was singled out because autistic people in general are considered an easy target, and the reason I know that he singled me out is because the other person he singled out was the one with ADHD. So he picked out the autistic person and the HD person and no one else, so yeah. Another time, one day someone stole my backpack containing all my books and stuff. I had to call my parents before a teacher would finally be like, "Oh yeah, theft. Do we have to do something about this?" Eventually I got it back and I was sent home crying, and of course nothing happened to the people bullying me, because why would you? Teachers often bullied me for not paying attention. Eventually they told my parents, and my teachers and my parents, they all agreed that I wasn't paying attention because I didn't look at them. But a big part of autism is that you can pay much better attention when you don't look at someone. That way you don't get distracted by whatever it is they're doing. So yeah, I was punished for paying attention by people too lazy to just Google autism for 5 seconds. And at the time, Google was already everywhere, so it's not like they didn't have the resources. This ended in college when I was 16 years old. In the Netherlands, it's possible to go to a lower level of college called vocational education at the age of 16. On one of the first weeks, I was talking to a 24-year-old guy and told him that I got bullied basically every day and that I was just expecting it to happen in college as well, because why wouldn't it? And he felt bad for me. Then he started talking with some fellow students how they shouldn't bully me, and he and another 17-year-old student basically convinced the class to just not continue my bullying. So just to recap, a 17-year-old and a 24-year-old did more to end my bullying than dozens and dozens of adult teachers who were getting paid to do that job. Another great example is actually getting into college. When I was 16 years old, I had a plan. I wasn't very social, but for any job I wanted, I needed to be able to actually, have a conversation with people. So I decided to choose a degree that would involve me having to communicate with a lot of people, where I would learn how to become more social. Anyway, I was 16, so I needed my parents' signature, and my father basically screamed in my ear that, no, you don't want to study this, look at this picture, you have to talk to people, you don't like talking to people. So yeah, in hindsight, I actually picked a really good study where I learned English and social skills at the same time, so it probably worked out best, but As a fellow autistic person, what motivates you to continue making videos? In simple terms, I am motivated by money. In my country, buying a house is very expensive, and under the previous Prime Minister, Rutte, the Dutch government became mostly liberal, which is a right-wing ideology. As part of that ideology, they decided to save money on as many things as possible, including providing enough houses for everyone. As a result, there is now a massive housing shortage, meaning the prices will just go up and up. Luckily, Rutte has left national politics and will be moving on to Secretary General of NATO, so we've all got that disaster to look forward to. And his party is no longer the biggest one. But instead, the Dutch people looked at all the liberalism and decided that the thing that can solve right-wing problems was an even more right-wing government. Led by Prime Minister Dick, and yes, that is his real name. I also have no idea why he chose to go with Dick instead of just keeping his original name of Richard or, Rich, whatever. And so far, Prime Dick's government is incredibly unstable and is being attacked from both the parties supporting him as well as the parties opposing him. So in short, nothing is going to change while still having a ton of major issues like housing, healthcare, mental health, aging population, the Senate being made up mostly of people in the pocket of the corporations, etc. And when a government fails to fix even the most basic issues in their society, it becomes a hotbed for populists. Populists tend to have more extreme views, and in the Netherlands we don't have an extremist left-wing party in parliament, which means that the far right will get into power the more the far right refuses to address the issues they keep complaining about. And when the far right gets into power, they start building camps to put people in they find undesirable. The first group of undesirables are usually an ethnic or religious minority. The second group are the disabled, such as Down syndrome, ADHD, and autistic people. Let's not forget that Hans Asperger, one of the earliest autism researchers, was a Nazi, and that he sent many children to their deaths. So what motivates me to continue making videos? Well, I came out as autistic, so I will become part of the second wave if the far right ever gets into proper power. I'm currently trying to make more videos so I can go somewhere else before the camps start opening up. And I know it sounds paranoid, and I'm sure a lot of you listening voted for a right-wing party, and most of you are probably not expecting this to happen. The thing though, I looked on Wikipedia for a list of all far-right governments, and in over half the cases I could find, there was some sort of ethnic cleansing. And I don't want to roll with those odds. So basically, I need to be a financially stable person to be able to move anywhere in the world, because that way I am more likely to get accepted. Do you feel your autism gets in the way of your work in any way? Oh yes, constantly. I get distracted by everything and I focus on things that absolutely don't matter. What is the best type of cheese in a grilled cheese? Gouda cheese. Chapter 5. Politics. Pineapples on pizza, acceptable or not? No, not acceptable. Why did many of the communist countries during the Cold War choose to follow Stalinism instead of Marxist-Leninism? It is important to keep in mind that almost every country that became communist was a dictatorship or monarchy beforehand, and transitioning from one type of government to the other is incredibly difficult. And the people in power are also the ones who know how to run the country, and those people will try to keep the current system to keep themselves in power, which in the case of a dictatorship or an absolute monarchy, the closest communist version of that is Stalinism, where the state controls everything. It would actually be interesting to see a democratic country turn to communism so that we can see what they do with it, but that's unlikely to happen anytime soon. Who is your favorite historical figure? Mikhail Gorbachev. He saw where the Soviet Union was heading and actually tried to do something about it. And he got so close. Imagine today if Russia had become a social democratic country like Norway or Finland. Even if places like the Baltics would break away, the amount of sheer suffering that would have been prevented. He was one of the few leaders in Russia who actually wanted to do something, who saw the problems, had a feasible plan to fix them, and was actually competent enough to try to implement them. It's just sad that he failed. What will future forms of government look like? Well, I think that will depend a lot on the technological developments. Based on my understanding of politics, there are various types of governments, but they can basically be summed up as individualist, where anyone can do what they want, which is on the far right, and then on the far left, you have human beings basically becoming a single organism. Both of these are impossible, and we all sit somewhere in the middle. But seeing as we're talking about the future, technology is likely to make more political ideologies possible. For example, let's say 10,000 years from now, you could probably have your own spaceship that is able to completely repair itself. You could fly off into the unknown without having to look back. You could live a completely individualist lifestyle with cloning facilities to create any population you'd want, completely subservient to you. Robots, cyborgs, any animal you want to create, even fantasy ones. Change the entire ecosystem and atmosphere of the ship that you're in. Mind control a robot body to live in a sulfuric environment for a couple of years. You can do anything. While on the other hand, the ability to connect brains to computers would likely let us have a hive mind where all human beings are connected to instantly come to an agreement based on how each individual member feels, working in unison towards a common goal, or maybe one where every person is enslaved through this hive mind. But even without these technologies, humans will head out into the universe, and the universe is really big. In our own solar system, there are millions of asteroids that you could go to, build a rotating habitat to create spin gravity, and then mine it for resources. Some of them are just a few days away at light speed, others over a year. And as far as we know, we can't go faster than the speed of light. So even before we go to another star system, we're likely going to see a lot of people start up far-off colonies in the Kuiper Belt or Oort cloud. And based on historical examples, a lot of them will have certain fringe groups in them. Imagine a colony ship full of Mormons trying to create a Mormon civilization a light year away. Or imagine a group of hardcore communists trying to set up their own communist utopia. Or maybe people who live a certain lifestyle, such as a bunch of people who are non-monogamous who want to live their lifestyle without fear of being looked down upon. And I'm willing to bet that there aren't any spacefaring civilizations anywhere near us, because they would need energy, and some of the most abundant energy sources in the universe come from stars and black holes. So they would somehow absorb all this energy, which means all its light as well, so why can we still see them? So I expect humans to grow into an incredibly diverse group, because people who are happy in the current system are also the least likely to go away and colonize another planet, asteroid or star system. As a Dutchman, are you upset that the Swiss stole your mountains? No, not really, we get high in other ways. I mean, that's how I answer most of these questions anyway. When you or your family start getting hungry, how long will you remain a law-abiding citizen? My lawyer told me to say that I will never ever break the law in any capacity anywhere at any time. However, let's imagine that there is an alternate universe where I was never born. Instead, someone else was born called Not Avery. And Not Avery has the same life as me. Well, Not Avery would do whatever it took. Worst case scenario, Not Avery goes to prison where his food will be provided for him. Dutch prisons are better looking than some of the apartments I've lived in. But if the goal was to get food by going to prison, then Not Avery would make a very public and illegal protest that would hit the national news and make it clear what the socio-economic conditions are that led to this very illegal form of protest. What do you think are the best traits for a world leader to have, and who, alive or deceased, comes closest to that role in your opinion? I think in the current systems, a leader needs to possess 3 traits. Firstly, they need to have a good plan to make things better. Secondly, they need to be capable of actually implementing that plan. And thirdly, they need to actually want to implement that plan and not be massively corrupt. Most leaders do not possess all 3 things. A lot of really competent people implement bad plans, or they are really competent and they just ignore good plans because they're lazy. Or maybe they're just incompetent, even though they're trying their best. I think what's important is to create a system where you no longer need a leader to possess so many good traits in order for you to have a functioning government. The first thing to have is a bottom-up democracy, in my opinion. So instead of a cabinet or a parliament coming up with ideas, you'd have local councils comprised of a small town or a neighborhood with a couple of hundred voters, or maybe a few thousand. They each select representatives from among themselves to represent their political interests. And discuss stuff like where to build a local park or something like that. And that way, you actually know the person who is representing you. You can actually go up to them and talk to them. You know who it is, and it's not just some random person on TV somewhere that you have to send them a letter and hope that he reads your letter out of the other 100,000 letters they received that month. Several of those local regions would then form a larger region, the size of maybe a city or a collection of towns. Then another and another, with provinces, states, all the way up to the central government. And people would then be able to present ideas locally to send them up the chain of governance. And you can still have a parliament chosen through a proportional system. After all, there are many countries that have 1, 2, or 3 chambers of government, so why can't you do that? At the same time, all the work they do should be completely public, because it's not like they're dealing with national security issues and another country is going to be like, no, that neighborhood, we need to know what is happening there. It's not so easy to lie to everyone when your neighbor next door can look at what you're doing as their representative. Incompetent people would be voted out. Plus, humans tend to come up with the best ideas when working in large groups. So the more people we involve in the government, generally the better it gets. And people would actually have a say in the government instead of voting for someone who might be completely incompetent, who might have a terrible plan, but you don't understand that it's terrible because you had other things to do in your life. Or maybe they're just massively, completely corrupt. So now the plans you have are actually good because it's what the people want instead of what a small group of people in the government, in the capital, think is good. Next, government should be more open, let everything they do be filmed so anyone can check. So unless it involves matters of national security, such as military strategy, then you can just tell people exactly what you're doing. After all, if your government is negotiating pensions or healthcare costs, why keep that a secret? I mean, other than for corruption purposes. So yeah, make it public so the corrupt are easily identified. And lastly, you should be able to vote people out of power much more easily. That way incompetent people can be removed. Because you might be good at running an election campaign, but that doesn't mean you know how to handle something like running a Ministry of Health. Maybe we could have some sort of independent body whose main job is just to check on elected officials to make sure that they are actually doing the job that they say that they are doing. Of course, this doesn't get implemented because the people in power got their power through the current corrupt system. But this would remove the need for leaders to have any good traits. It would remove the need to play Russian roulette with the government every time you have an election. I mean, I think most of you can think of a leader from your own country who seemed like a great leader at first, but in the end made everything much worse. That's a feature of the system, and we can change the system. For countries that's in a bad cycle of corruption, do you still have hope that they can change, like Russia and the super rich making the country poor? Yes, but it would require a lot of time and work. For the current generations born in dictatorships, they might be free when they get old. Even here in Europe, it took centuries to rid ourselves of the yoke of the monarchies and the dictatorships, and they're still trying to come back. And many of us are still struggling with rampant corruption. Here in my own country, for example, the Senate is largely made of people working for businesses who have a very strong interest in the laws that they pass. And of course, they all say that their job at a multinational company deeply invested in the Dutch economy does not impact their decision making at all. But I don't believe that. And we're one of the lucky ones. This is a small crime compared to what many of you are probably going through. I'm sure a lot of you would wish that this is one of the biggest complaints you could make about your government. What do you think of the USA's two-party system? In two-party systems, you are the most likely to win if you look as much like the other candidate as possible. In the USA, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are both right-wing parties. If you put them on a scale with other countries, they would basically be the same. Then anyone on the right will vote for the Republicans and anyone further on the left for the Democrats. But what this means is that anyone who isn't in that very narrow part of the political spectrum does not get represented. What's your view on Indian nationalists? Nationalism has never worked. I can't find a single nationalist country that didn't crash and burn or started ethnic cleansing. So it's bad. It doesn't work. Show me a nationalist country that actually works while also maintaining the rights of its citizens. Anyway, these were all the questions that I had when I was writing the script. Maybe later when we get 1 million subscribers I'll do it again, but we'll see. This was Avery from This was Avery from History Scope. Thank you for watching.